You are listening to The Joy of the Gospel, and my name is Robert Veen. Hi everyone. The coming weeks I'm going to read through the Gospel of Mark and try to explain to you the depth and the beauty of that Gospel. And today we start with the first chapter of Mark. And without any further introduction, let's read. Let's read the text. Let's hear the voice of God speaking through this Gospel. I'm reading from the translation made by John Nelson Darby in the 19th century. So Mark 1. Beginning of the glad tidings, beginning of the Gospel, of Jesus Christ, Son of God. As it is written in Isaiah the prophet, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, who shall prepare thy way. Voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. So there we have verse 1, 2 and 3. It's a unique gospel, this Gospel of Mark, precisely because of this first verse. Beginning of the glad tidings. Beginning of the message that God will send to humanity through Jesus Christ, Son of God. And he is called by his full name here. There is a message about Jesus, born in Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth, crucified in Jerusalem. This human being, this very special human being, who got the name Jesus, and we know from other Gospels that the name Jesus, Yeshua, has a reference in it to Yeshua, meaning salvation or redemption, and it's sort of like the verb he will save. So there we have a message in itself. He is called Jesus because he will be the Savior. And the other thing is, of course, it's the same name as the assistant of Moses, the leader of Israel after the death of Moses, who was called Joshua as well, and who led his people into the promised land. So already in this name Jesus we find references to the gospel. He will bring salvation, he will save the people from their sins, he will be the Savior, and he is the successor of Moses. He will actually bring people into the promised land. He will not only announce salvation or bring this deliverance of sin and guilt, but he will actually fulfill all the promises of God and bring his people into the promised land. The second part of his name, of course, is Christ. It's not really a name, it's actually a title. It's the title of any priest or king who has been anointed, because Christou in Greek means to anoint. So he is the Christ. He is the anointed one. He is the high priest of our redemption, as the letter of Hebrews tells us, and he is the anointed king. He is the Lord and Master of the universe. He is higher than the emperor. And then the third title, Son of God, that refers to his most inner being. That's about his person in itself. He is the Son of God. Now, that can refer to the title of kingship. The Son of God is also a title of the anointed king in Israel. It certainly does not refer to the title that the emperor carries. All emperors in Rome were called sons of God. But it must be some kind of polemical title here also. Jesus Christ is the true Son of God. He is higher than the emperor, higher than Caesar. He is the true Son of God. In that sense, you can see the title Son of God referring to his kingship. But of course we know from the other Gospels, especially the Gospel of John, that he is also part of the Trinity. Um, the Son of God refers to God in the way that he reveals himself in the history of humanity, and then he is called the Son. So we could go now to the first chapter of John to elaborate on this, but it's just a title here. Son of God is his title, and it will be evident from our reading of the rest of the Gospel that we find Jesus Christ working. He is showing his royal prerogatives, he is showing his priestly prerogatives, and both cannot be explained unless we accept that he is the true Son of God. He cannot be the King of the world, he cannot be the high priest that brings forgiveness unless he is the Son of God. So, already in this first verse we have this beautiful summary of the gospel. It's a glad tiding. It's a message of salvation and redemption from our guilt, from our sin, from the slavery to the powers in this world. It's a message of redemption which is concentrated in this one human being that lived among us 2,000 years ago, who was called Jesus by his mother because of the special annunciation. The angel came and told Mary and Joseph to call their son Savior, to call him Jesus. He is the Christ in his function. He is priest and he is king, and all of that is possible because here God himself entered into the human world, entered into history, and therefore Jesus is truly the Son of God, higher than the emperor, totally different from the emperor in his kingdom. Then we have in verse 2 and 3 two separate references, quotations from the prophets. And the first one is very interesting. It's not from Isaiah, but it's from Malachi. And it says, "Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, who shall prepare thy way." Now in Malachi it's obvious that the Lord is sending his angel before the face of Israel. I will send my messenger, which is the angel of the Lord, which is Jesus, before the face of Israel, and he shall prepare the way of the people through the desert into the promised land. Most of the time, however, people read this as a reference to the messenger that came to announce the coming of Jesus. The messenger then is John the Baptist, and thy face refers to Jesus, as if God is speaking to his son and telling him that he will send a messenger before him, and that messenger will prepare the way of Jesus. I prefer to read it like this, that this is exactly as it is stated in Malachi 3, that God will send his angel, that is Jesus, that is the Son of God, before the face of Israel. And then obviously the second part of the quotation in verse 3 does refer to John the Baptist. He is the voice of one crying in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord." So we have two separate ideas of the preparation of the way, and I think that might be the cause of the confusion. The first reference is in verse 2, the angel of God will prepare the way of the people, and then we have the voice of one crying in the wilderness, who is preparing the way of the Son of God, who will prepare the way for Israel. Prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. By the way, this manner of stating this promise makes it obvious that the one who is coming here, the one who John the Baptist is announcing, is truly the Lord. Prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. That is the function of John the Baptist. Now, this is the first time that I am trying to explain the Gospel of Mark in a foreign tongue, because English is not my native language. I'm a Dutchman, but I hope that you can understand my English and that it's concise and clear enough to follow me in explaining the Gospel of Mark. It's a joy talking to you about such wonderful things as the Gospel. So, that's it for the first message, the first 3 verses of the Gospel to Mark. The glad tidings, the Gospel of salvation about Jesus the Christ, who is the Son of God. Thank you for listening, and hear you next time. See you next time.